Welcome to the AC 24/7 Top Story Countdown. We'll guide you through the biggest news of the day. Our focus, advocating our rights, advocating health, and advocating Earth. Here's our pick for number 4.
Florida Governor Ron Desantis rolling into rural Iowa, taking his campaign refresh on the road.
I think it's very important that you go to the rural counties, and so we're going to hit them all, and this is probably the easiest way to do it.
DeSantis back in the Hawkeye State following an overhaul of his 2-month-old campaign. In the last week, he laid off more than 1/3 of his staff, citing budget concerns, as senior campaign officials pledged a, quote, leaner and more insurgent campaign to take on former President Donald Trump. During a gathering of donors over the weekend, campaign officials admitted missteps in fundraising and messaging.
You've made some changes to your campaign in the last several days. What do you think that the voters should be taking away from that based on the fact that you're asking them to make you the top executive?
So what I would say is focus on the substance. You know, a lot of this process stuff, things happen. You know, as an executive, you have a commander's intent. If that commander's intent is not followed, then you have to make sure it's followed.
After pledging a national campaign, DeSantis is now laser focused on early nominating states such as Iowa, which is set to hold the GOP primary's first caucuses January 15th.
It's great to be back in the state of Iowa.
A recent Fox Business poll shows former President Donald Trump with a commanding lead in the state, garnering 46% of the vote from likely caucus goers. DeSantis is in a distant second place with 16%.
The stakes are high. We don't have the opportunity to fritter this one away, and we got to get the job done.
DeSantis' 5-stop bus tour through rural Iowa, sponsored by Never Back Down, the super PAC supporting him that's raised some $130 million since March and is focused on building out an infrastructure across a number of states to support the campaign.
We don't feel like we need, Jane Doe at 123 Main Street in Iowa to know everything there is to know by tomorrow. We have 6 months to help deliver that.
And as his campaign resets, DeSantis is zeroing in on his message of electability, making the case he's the only one in the primary who can win in a general election, saying this when asked how he'll convince Trump supporters to support him instead.
In Florida, he won by 3, I won by 20. We're not getting a mulligan on 2024. You either go, you get the job done, or you don't. And so I will get the job done.
TheAdvocateChannel.com looks at the world through the lens of equality and inclusion. Subscribe, like, and share now. AC 24/7's Top Story Countdown continues with our producer's pick for number 3.
A judge hearing arguments from the prosecution and defense on whether Oxford High School mass shooter Ethan Crumbley could possibly be rehabilitated or face life in prison.
The amount of research and planning and preparation that went into it, and the way he carried it out. The picking and choosing of who would die.
In court, Crumbley's journal entries read aloud by detectives.
I'm going to record the shooting so when they show the video in court, everyone can see their children and friends dying. I want for the parents to see their kids burned to ash and bawl their eyes out. I'm going to spend the rest of my life in prison, rotting like a tomato.
Supporting the prosecution's argument that Crumbley's premeditated desire to inflict torture and pain upon his victims is a key reason the 17-year-old should spend the rest of his life in prison.
The parents who lost their children that day, and those that are here with scars and bullet holes in their bodies. Your Honor, there is only one way to do that.
Victim impact statements also expected to help the prosecution make its case on why Crumbley should have no chance of a possible release. The shooter's attorney, Paulette Lofton, says the defense will show Crumbley is not irreparably corrupt and should be sentenced to a term of years in prison. Crumbley pleaded guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder and 20 other charges related to the 2021 mass shooting. I'm Cole Higgins reporting.
Like the Advocate Channel on Facebook for the best way to get updates on stories that advocate for equality, justice, our rights, and more. AC 24/7 continues with today's top 2 pick.
A typical 17-year-old and a typical summer workout. But 5 years ago, Alex Nasario's life was anything but.
I knew I was homeless. I knew I didn't have shoes or a shelter or a place to call home.
Something that the Starbucks employees in Escondido, California noticed.
They informed me that there's a young boy that would hang out at the store till they closed, and then they noticed that he'd go across the street and would be alone at the Jack in the Box.
Then Officer John Larson found Alex alone.
I actually put myself out with dispatch and went to go contact him and just started chatting with him. Told him he wasn't in trouble.
A conversation that both would remember for years to come.
What's up, bud? Hi.
Officer Larson knew Alex needed help.
Old times are tough.
He dropped him off with child welfare services, but confidentiality rules prevented him from keeping in touch.
Once he was out of my hands, I called him multiple times, different months, just to see if I got lucky and got slipped through the cracks.
But Officer Larson never gave up.
How's family?
Family's going good right now.
Last December, another member of the police department found Alex and gave Officer Larson the good news.
I started tearing. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it.
After 5 years, the two met for lunch for another unforgettable conversation.
It felt pretty surreal since I didn't expect Officer Larson to try to find me.
And not only did he find him,
when I met you, you were already in middle school, right?
he attended Alex's high school graduation, a barbecue with his foster family, and promised a forever friendship.
As I grew older, I realized that Officer Larson took the best course for my future. I love him more now.
The admiration is mutual.
It almost feels like my career's complete.
Alex wants to be a graphic designer.
You took a bad situation and you turned it into everything positive.
He says that thanks to Officer Larson and others, he has the physical and mental strength to overcome challenges and pursue his dreams.
Stronger than me. He made all these decisions on his own to succeed. I think every time we have a good success in my line of career, it's always a great validation.
Follow the Advocate channel on Twitter and Instagram to stay updated on stories that matter every day. Here's our #1 story of the day. Take a look.
Congress is approaching its August recess, and there's a chance lawmakers will be out of Washington, D.C. before resolving an ongoing hold on military nominations.
We're seeing how military lives are being put on hold and how they're being treated, and it's very discouraging.
Military nominations have been placed on pause by Republican Senator and former college football coach Tommy Tuberville, who was against the Pentagon's policy of reimbursing military service members and their families for travel to obtain abortion care.
It alarms me that we can't come to a conclusion and nobody's talking to me. I mean, you can't change your mind.
Defense Secretary reached out to you. Defense Secretary reached out to you.
Yeah, for a few minutes.
Earlier this week, a group of Democratic senators on the Senate Armed Services Committee wrote to Minority Leader Mitch McConnell to squash Tuberville's blockade. But when the two met on Thursday,
nothing's changed.
However, President Joe Biden says change is needed.
It's time for service members to receive the pay and promotions they've earned and deserve. It's time for the Senate of Alabama to let these generals and admirals fully serve their country and service members care for themselves and their families.
On Thursday night, the Senate passed the National Defense Authorization Act in a bipartisan fashion, with Majority Leader Chuck Schumer saying the Tuberville situation is up to Republican leadership. I'm John Lawrence reporting.
Thanks for watching the Advocate channel's top stories. We're on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. Follow, like, and share, or check out advocatechannel.com for even more stories that advocate for you.